Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to talk about the endocrine system and their hormones, specifically within the hypothalamus and pituitary gland. Um, so we're going to be able to describe the structure and function relations between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, and discuss the structure of the endocrine gland, describing the target and function of each hormone as it secretes. That will be specifically with our um, hormone gland chart that you guys are filling out as we go through these notes after you take these notes. So first off, the pituitary gland hangs from the hypothalamus via a stalk called the infundibulum, and it is seated on the sella tunica of the sphenoid bone. And as you probably remember when we did the bone practical, is that little indention within the sphenoid bone that looks like kind of like where it's like cradling something. What it's cradling is the pituitary gland. The two pituitary lobes is anterior, made up of epithelial and granular tissue, while the posterior is neural tissue, or think of like nervous tissue or neurons. The hypothalamus pituitary relationship goes in like this. The hypothalamus produces two hormones. The posterior pituitary acts as a storage area and releases some hormones we're going to talk about here in a minute. So we have our hypothalamus here, and then our pituitary right underneath. What I have on the right picture is the bone there. That is the sella tunica of the sphenoid bone. And then what you see here between the anterior and posterior pituitary gland is the anterior, as you see, the neurons do not travel to the anterior pituitary gland. Hormones going to release here, and says this epithelial and granular, it's able to, those hormones are able to um, go into the pituitary gland so it can release what it needs to release. While in the posterior pituitary gland, you have the neurons or the nervous system go into the posterior to give electrical impulses to release certain hormones. So the anterior pituitary gland, okay, was traditionally called the master gland. However, it's now the hypothalamus is the master gland, because what we have found out is that the hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland, as you saw in the previous picture. Most hormones are tropic, which regulate other endocrine glands. So the first up on the anterior pituitary gland is the growth hormone. This is going to target muscles, bones, livers, and cartilage. Its function is for skeletal and cell growth, increase fat breakdown, and increase blood glucose. So a homeostatic imbalance here is giantism here is hypersecretion of the growth hormone in childhood. We have the acromegaly, which is hypersecretion of the growth hormone in adulthood. And then we have the pituitary dwarfism, which is hyposecretion in childhood. So what's going to happen in height is this is going to increase height, this is going to decrease height. So then we have the thyroid stimulating hormone, or the TSH, or the thyrotropin. It's a tropic hormone. It targets the thyroid, and it functions to stimulate the thyroid to secrete its hormones. Then we have the adrenocorticotropic hormone, or the ACTH. This is also a tropic hormone. It's going to target the adrenal cortex, and it's going to stimulate the adrenal cortex to secrete its hormones that you guys have probably already seen in your previous video. Then we have our prolactin hormone, or PRL. It's going to target the breast. Its function is to promote lactation, and this can be within males or females. Then we have gonadotropic hormones. So these two gonadotropic hormones are going to target specifically the gonads of the males and females. So we have the follicle stimulating hormone, or what we call FSH. It's a tropic hormone. Targets the gonads, aka the ovaries and testes. The function of ovaries is to stimulate the follicle development and promote estrogen production, while the function of the testes is to stimulate sperm development. The luteinizing hormone, or what we call LU, it is a tropic hormone. It's going to target the gonads again, ovaries and testes, just like the last one, or the FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone. And the function of ovary is to trigger ovulation and stimulate the production of estrogen and progesterone. The function of the testes is to promote testosterone production. So here we have our hormonal stimulus here, and our hormone is released caused by another hormone, aka a tropic hormone. So our hypothalamus is going to release a hormone into the anterior pituitary gland. It's going to travel down to the anterior pituitary gland, and it's going to release certain hormones to be able to target either the thyroid, adrenal cortex, or the gonads, based on what the hypothalamus is telling the anterior pituitary gland to do. So now we have the posterior pituitary gland. Our first one is oxytocin hormone. We remember this from when we talked about positive feedback loops within pregnancy. Oxytocin is going to target the uterus and breast. The functions is to stimulate uterine muscle contraction, or Braxton Hicks contraction, or labor. And it's going to initiate also labor and milk production, or what we call the letdown reflex. Now, it's also controlled by the positive feedback loop for homeostasis, which is very, very exciting. So basically within this one is we have our hypothalamus goes to our posterior pituitary gland, which then releases oxytocin, which then goes to two target cells and says, okay, we need more. So it's going to tell the hypothalamus to then keep releasing, and it's going to go through this continuous cycle. Now we have antidiuretic hormone, or what we call ADH. The target is the kidneys. The function stimulates the kidney tubules to absorb water from forming urine. Diuresis is urine production, and antidiuretic is inhibit urine production. So we're going to inhibit urine production in order to absorb water. Now, we can do this in a couple of ways. We can also block an ADH, or block ADH from targeting the kidneys due to what we call ADH inhibitors. We have chemicals in certain things that we ingest, like coffee or tea, that become ADH inhibitors, and usually when you drink those, you go pee a lot due to not being able to absorb the water, which is why you get dehydrated very, very quickly if you do not replenish your body with water. And our homeostatic imbalance is diabetes insipidus, which is a hyposecretion of ADH causing extreme thirst and excessive urine output. Alcohol also inhibits ADH secretion, which causes excessive urine output, or what we're known as the hangover effect. This also occurs with, or the reason for it is vasopression, or the constriction of the blood vessels. So that's going to be it for our notes today. You guys have already done part 3, so make sure you fill out your chart, and your notes will be due Friday, and so is your chart. Hope you guys have a great day.